Good evening, everyone. And as we wait for the attendees to join in, I extend a hearty welcome from LinkedIn Local Bharat. As our Prime Minister said, be vocal for local, and that is where we are. It's our country, and we are proud participants in creating a community which can benefit from the dialogue that LinkedIn provides. We are joined by Preeti. She's the founder for LinkedIn Local India and an active participant in creating community activities, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And she has done human service for military veteran integration also. The fact remains her heart and her energy remains with venture capitalists and startups, where she is prominently figuring in the jury when it comes to selection of startups and also in guiding entrepreneurs. And that is where the focus for the month of August is to identify these budding entrepreneurs and find out their story. And we have such a hidden gem amongst us, Vikas Bansal. Welcome, Vikas.
Thank you, Amit. Thanks for the introduction.
As we're having more and more participants join in, Vikas, let me just give a brief intro about you. I know we don't have time to cover the entire journey, but I'll try and do it justice. Engineering professional who went into sales, then pivoted out and became an entrepreneur with impact in Impact Partners, yeah, and then an author. It's a journey which will really amaze a few people as to how much energy do you have, Vikas. That's the story I think we will be trying to find out today in our interaction, in which we'll keep bouncing back and forth between Preeti and me with the questions, and definitely the questions from the audience. Please throw in your questions, throw in your queries, comments for Vikas. He will be taking them on around the halfway mark of our dialogue. That's about 20 minutes from now. And the best two queries will be getting a surprise gift also. We will be also launching a poll somewhere at the close of the ceremony here. And that poll will sort of guide us as to how you have perceived our interaction. And we would love to get feedback on that. Without wasting much more time, Vikas, let's jump right in. What was the schooling? What was the family life like when you were in school? Because that is what prepared you to go ahead into the journey where you are right now. So tell us something about that.
So, hi Amit and hi Preeti. So, I come from a small town called Ambala Cant, which is on the border of Punjab and Haryana. It happens to be in Haryana. And by stroke of luck, everybody seems to be knowing about Ambala now. I mean, the Rafales are parked there at the Air Force station in Ambala. So, I happen to stay about 7 kilometers away from the Air Force base. And that was my hometown, and I did my schooling from that place, my class 10 and class 12. I was lucky enough to be in a business family. So my father ran a business. And I suppose that's when I picked up the nitty-gritties of what life is. Because, Amit, life is slightly different for kids who have been brought up in a business family versus kids, let's say, who had parents who were in a regular job. Because for the kids in the regular job, you always had a regular income. While I actually saw the highs and the lows while graduating, right? So there was a time when we could even afford to travel by air, which was a big thing in the 80s. And there was a time when we actually, we never knew what's going to happen after 3 months. The business wasn't doing too well. So, I mean, I saw both the aspects of what life is. And that really prepared me mentally for the innings that I'm playing today. That's what I can say. And so that was what life in Ambala was, and it's a pretty decent city. I'm sure you come from a defense background. You know about what cantonments are like. You don't have many avenues to spend your money. I mean, these are small townships. So that was what life was in that small city.
And as the progression happened, it was engineering as a first choice, or was that something that your family wanted?
So this was always there at the back of my mind. So my father happens to be an engineer from Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh, which used to be called PEC. And even my chacha, he's an engineer from PEC. And my chacha also happens to be a defense officer. He was in the Air Force. So, I mean, I wouldn't say there was any pressure from my parents of becoming an engineer. But you know, again, I mean, things happen, I believe, more out of omission than out of some motivation. I still remember in class 11, during our time, so we all are the same age group, right? During our times, we only have four options. The brightest went for the medical, then you had between the non-medical and the commerce, and then you had arts. In those days, it used to be called arts. Today, you call that as humanities, right? A much more respected name, but we used to call them arts. And you know what art students, they were not really looked up to. So arts was definitely a no-no. I still remember in my 10th class, we had that, what you have that frog dissection, which happens in the lab in the 10th class. I didn't faint, but I was kind of near to being fainted. So it was very clear medical was out. And arts, I mean, I was a good student, so arts, definitely, I wouldn't be living up to my status by taking arts. So I only had two options, either to go in for non-medical or to go in for commerce. And again, now with my father and my chacha having been both being engineering graduates from Pech Chandigarh, I believe that just might have weighed upon my mind. And during those times, there were a lot of openings for the engineers. I mean, the economy was just about beginning to open up. I'm talking about the early 90s when I possibly took that decision. 91 is the year when the liberalization happened, and 91 is the year when I graduated from my 10th class. So I believe there were certain things which were weighing upon my mind, and I happened to choose non-medical. And once I took non-medical, obviously engineering was going to be the first choice. And I never had any dream of getting into IITs. I'll be very honest. I simply want to get into Pech Chandigarh. That was my only dream. That was the best engineering college up of Delhi. So excluding Delhi, that was the best engineering college during those times. I only had one dream to get into Pech. I couldn't fulfill that, but I landed up in the second best engineering college that time. So that's how life unfolded.
And the way the life unfolded was the next logical step for an engineer. I am. So
I wouldn't say again.
Isn't it a given that you would be going in for something more, because you were not stopping at just being an engineer? You really wanted to excel in the management field also. So how did that happen?
So again, as I told you, so engineering was only because I wanted to be non-medical, and engineering was a culmination of that non-medical dream, nothing else. From the very first year, I was very clear I was not going to get into any so-called technical aspects. And again, Amit, that was a time I still remember. So out of a batch of electronics and computers, so I graduated in electronics and communication. And anybody during that time with an engineering degree or a software engineering degree, that was literally a passport to US during those times. And everybody knew it. And as we were the second best engineering college up of Delhi, I mean, everybody was assured of a US placement, kind of assured. But I was very clear I was not going to be a software engineer. And incidentally, in my book, I have mentioned about my story in which I really dreaded. I mean, we'll come down to that once we discuss more about, I'm sure we'll be discussing something about the book. But so by the end of the second year, I didn't have any big IIM ambitions in my mind. I was very clear I had to be in some non-technical work, in some management kind of a role. But I mean, those were the times, again, having come from a small city, and again, Kurukshetra, NIT Kurukshetra, we were again in a small city. So we didn't have any big dreams, but yes, one person really influenced my decision making. He was my senior in the college. And incidentally, he happened to be my senior in my school as well. Okay. So when I was in my second year, he was in the third year, and he was preparing for IIM. And he actually got through to IIM Calcutta. So again, this was a defining moment. Many a times the big decisions in life are not taken very rationally. These are very impulsive, emotional decisions. And I looked up to that person as a role model. And I said, if he's doing something, if he's preparing for something, that ought to be good. And it's that impulsive moment wherein you take a major decision of your life. And that's what happened to me.
I think the journey, as we have seen till your MBA, is being one of high expectations that you were setting yourself up for success, and you were willing to give it all you have. Preeti, would you take it on from here for his corporate journey now?
Sure. Thank you very much. And before that, very good evening to everybody that's here today. A quick reminder once again, Amit has said before, let those questions and comments keep coming in into the question and answer section that you see at the bottom of your screen. And let me give you a little bit of a dangle here as well. Couple of good questions. Amit has already said a surprise gift. Let me sweeten that deal a bit further. Um, some of you might even get voice to ask your questions yourself. So please, please, please put those thinking caps on as we are talking. I'm sure there'll be bits and pieces coming into your mind. Please start putting them into the question and answer section. So thank you very much for that. And with that, so because one small town to another small town, because IIM was Indore, which is my state, the financial capital of Madhya Pradesh.
Yes.
So how was that? Was it the transition basically from one small town? Did that breed familiarity, or were you aspiring to go to a bigger city and try your hands into the big city life? You know, how did that come about? Tell me a little bit of the mental state at that point in time. How did that internalization happen? I know it's a sort of you don't have a choice in where you get or where you go, but you definitely have a choice on what you think or what you make of it. So that is what I want to hear about in terms of what were you thinking. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so Preeti, as I mentioned about my senior, and his name happens to be Dheeraj. So Dheeraj got through to IIM Calcutta, and again I was very clear. So I had to follow his footsteps. So IIM Calcutta was the only thing I was looking forward to while in my final year, and I wrote CAT in my final year. And I actually had a call from IIM Calcutta, IIM Lucknow, and a couple of other institutes. But I don't know, but I believe overconfidence got the better of me. And to this date, Amit, Preeti, to this date, I still remember the point wherein I flunked my interview. I mean, where I went wrong in my interview, in my IIM Calcutta interview. It's so very fresh even till this date. I don't remember what happened in the IIM Lucknow interview. But I actually finally got through to MDI Gurgaon.
Okay.
And it was a pretty decent institute even at that point in time. I'm talking about 1997. I refused that offer. And so if I look back today, so again, this is something which I mentioned in my book. Preeti, if I look back today, I'm being very honest. I will, if that scenario were to come across today in my life, I will not have the guts to refuse an MDI offer. And again, repeating, MDA was a very good institute even at that point in time. I'm not trying to kind of reduce its ranking. But I was in a zone wherein I wanted to be in an IIM. So I appeared again the next year. I couldn't even clear the written exam the next year. I tried a third time. And in the third time, now I didn't have a choice. I only got an interview call from IIM Indore. Yeah, so I mean, talking about big city, small city, I didn't have a choice, but I was very clear. It carried the IIM tag.
Yeah.
And there were only 6 IIMs at that point in time. So every institute was supposed to be a prestigious institute. So it was a do or die situation for me. I mean, I knew I just had to crack this exam. So and again, now when I look back, there was an interesting conversation which happened with an audience. So somebody happened to ask me, Vikas, what would have happened if you had not cleared it the third time? Ho sakta tha na. I had flunked it the first time, and I mean, I couldn't clear the interview. So I said I would have appeared the fourth time. So Indore was again a pretty good decision to have I mean, Indore was a very big city as compared to Ambala and Kurukshetra, right? And with a new campus, and we were a very small bunch of people. So I mean, I was really pumped up because finally I realized I had actually made it. I actually, if not Calcutta, at least I had achieved that IIM dream. So it was a really satisfying experience, and I really learned a lot from that process because all those 3 years I kind of never gave up. I was always sure that God had one seat reserved for me in an IIM. So when I look back, and there are moments of despair, we all go through moments of despair. I mean, even I go through that in my regular work life. But with whatever I did in those 3 years, it gives me a lot of hope that because if you've done it once, you will be able to do it again. So never give up. I mean, there's always a silver lining at the end of the road.
Very correct. You know, to me, from this persistence sort of comes through that you would sort of, you set a goal for yourself and you are persistent about it. So not the first, not the second, but the third time, just because you wanted to be in an IIM. Otherwise, you could have just taken it, the first time around and been in MBA, been in wherever that you could. But persistence is something, I think that's the key. Persistence and consistency both actually, I think, are keys. So brilliant. Um, Coming to the placements, so your first job, when you stepped out, was it through placement, campus placement? Was it through any outside help? How did that come about? How did you break through in your corporate job and sort of corporate world rather, life? And what was that first thing that you did? Did you get into sales straight away, or where did you go first? Over to you.
So again, so once you get into an IIM, so I had missed the American bus, so-called the American bus in my engineering, because I never wanted to be a software engineer. But now you still harbor those offshore dreams, no? So I still remember we were only 3 people who actually got a US placement from the campus. And this was with a software organization. So I was actually wanted to spend a couple of years there and definitely get some global exposure and again be back to India. So I opted for a non-sales job this time. After engineering, I obviously worked in sales for 2 years. This time I opted for a non-sales job because I wanted to be in US. But now again, both of you, if you remember, so I graduated in 2001. And by 2001, once we graduated, we had that big .com bust, right? This was a bubble. And we've been talking about many bubbles after that, but this was the first big bubble which we came across. So I was supposed to be in US, but as luck would have it, things were not really going well. So I joined their Indian office and I would stay put for a couple of months, just hoping that things would improve. It's similar to what we're going through, no, COVID. You're never too sure as to when things will improve, but you keep hoping that next September will be better than August, October will be better than September. So I was just counting my months that at least I will definitely have my visa processed in the next quarter. But somehow that never happened. And then I again decided that possibly God had a plan and I should venture back into sales. So I changed my organization then, and then I again landed up in sales. So that's what happened. So I never happened to leave India.
So sure. I mean, the main point is there was the bust in 2001. You were class of 2020, 2021, and here this year also, 2000, 2001. And here we are again at 2021, wherein, the class is again a flounder. So I think 20-year cycle or something is going on for that matter, So I know you've gone through another transition, but before that, quickly take me through the nuances of your corporate life, after this particular first job, your career progression, and what have you learned from, say, a couple of things that you picked up from your corporate life that stand out to you even today, to this date today, and what made you Vikas Bansal as you are today? Over to you.
So again, I would say my decision of again getting back into sales was, if I look back, that has been the best decision of my life. And Preeti, from the core of my heart, even so, I still take up a few courses at IMT Ghaziabad, and I also visit MDI Gurgaon for a one-off session once in a while. And whenever I happen to speak to the students, I always ask them that if you really want to do something out of the box, get into sales for a couple of years. That's when you have, we talk about those fancy words: accountability, responsibility, target, goal setting. Everything is a byproduct of being in sales. So when I look back, the 5 or 6 years which I spent in sales, and luckily I happened to traverse through both 3 kind of sales: the retail sales, channel sales, and then the enterprise sales. So that's been the best exposure. And another corporate decision, which again was a personal decision. So many people, when they get into jobs, they tend to specialize in a particular vertical, right? So Preeti, you've been in touch with so many people in the corporate. So people are kind of designated either as HR managers, or they are salespeople, or they are brand people, right? So you kind of verticalize all those people. I decided I will not belong to a particular genre. I have to understand the business. So whenever I got an opportunity, so I moved from sales to planning, from planning to finance, from finance to strategy, then to customer lifecycle, to analytics, to customer experience, to innovation. I mean, whatever new vertical I could lay my hands upon, I grabbed that opportunity. knowing very well that I might be losing out on a couple of lakhs. Yeah, because Preeti, if you tend to specialize in a particular vertical, obviously the kind of increments that you can expect will be much more than if you're just hopping across verticals. Because I'm not a master of a particular trade. But yes, if today somebody talks about business, I know business inside out. That's the difference. So when I look back in my current role, see, so whenever anybody gets into entrepreneurship, the first thing that a person fears is rejection. And again, I am thankful to my sales stint. Preeti, I am not afraid of rejections. I've had thousands of rejections in my sales career. And having traversed through different roles, I mean, I understand how people feel like. So when I get into corporate trainings, so I also work as a corporate trainer, right? So one of the USPs I talk about, Preeti, is that you put across a person, any person in your organization, 90% chances I would have worked through his role. I know how he feels. I know what his challenges are. That's a big value add which I can bring to the table. I mean, I'm not being theoretical. I'm not talking about just some bookish frameworks. I know what it feels like. So, I mean, whatever decisions I took, I'm reminded of that famous Steve Jobs speech of connecting the dots when I look back, Preeti. So, whatever decisions I took, I believe God had a plan for me. And it's really fulfilling when you speak to an audience and you are able to connect with them. So, in fact, I did a workshop for 24 chartered accountants. Right. And I have spoken to people who are salesmen. I have spoken to people who are into corporate strategy. I have spoken to people who are into customer experience. And the only reason organizations feel comfortable in inviting me is because I have worked through those roles. So that's what is helped me, and that's what is helping the current Vikas Bansal.
I can totally understand that, because when one wants to turn an entrepreneur, you have to know the nuances of each and every thing that entails or that can make you an entrepreneur. So I can totally understand you wanting to do bits and pieces of sales, marketing, branding, customer user experience, customer satisfaction, being the CEO, being the office boy, being the driver, and so on and so forth. So good on you. I know you transitioned to an entrepreneur, and then the next transition happened, and it's over to Amit to take us through that journey. But before I hand over the baton to Amit, there's a quick reminder once again, dear attendees, those questions, they need to come into the question and answer box now, please. And I'm launching the poll at this moment in time. Please imbibe whatever Vikas is saying, and whenever you're comfortable, please give us your feedback. We'll be eternally grateful to you for that. With that, it's over to you, Amit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Vikas, it's only when you have a story can there be a book. Am I right?
Yes, especially the first book.
There will be many more. I'm very, very sure, Vikas, there will be many more. And the way we met for the first time, you would remember these are chance interactions, and you have to take a chance on a few people and a few challenges which come your way. Nobody has a graph which only keeps going up and up. So the way you saw your life in your family, being from a business family, then in sales is all about that cycle, meeting the targets, not being able to meet. And we remember the other interaction in which we were talking about, you were saying that you were going out in autos and all. It was the rough and tumble of life which prepared you and got the message out of you through the book. Tell me something about that.
So you're very right, Amit. You've summed it up beautifully. So I just had a small correction. But the first book is definitely a replica of your life. So if you have a story, definitely the first book is what you felt all along these years. So now, again, to put it in perspective, Amit, so let's say we know each other since a couple of months. If we had spoken on 1st of January 2020, and if you told me, so Preeti, you have a poll? Do I wait for a minute?
The audience will be able to go through the poll and the interaction as we keep going along. By the time we come to the Q&A.
You carry on, Vikas, carry on. It's fine. They will take their own time. They will imbibe. They will take their own time. It's perfectly fine. Carry on. Yep.
Perfect. So Amit, so if we had spoken on 1st of January 2020, and if anybody would have asked me about me being an author, believe me, I would have said a clear no. And that's only about 6 months back. I always thought it to be a Herculean task to be writing so many pages or thousands of words. So I didn't have a big dream of being an author per se, but yes, I had something within me which I felt I had to, I could value add to the others. So it was a conference which actually ignited the spark once again. So I happened to attend a conference in February, and in which I heard a couple of speakers, and they kept on harping on the fact that if you're going to be a good speaker, it's obviously nice to have a book, or it's obviously nice to be an author. So obviously, I mean, they told it in their own sweet words. But by the time I left that conference, again, I knew that I had to write a book someday at least. So now that thought was there, that thought had been planted in my mind, that seed was actually sown in my mind. So I was still not very confident about, let's say, having a deadline to it. So this was a thought, but I thought I was not ready for that deadline. But then the lockdown happened. And again, as I told you, many things, there's a plan. So again, connecting dots, there's always a plan. So 1st January, I had no inclination of being an author. February, I attend an event and that seed is sown. March, the lockdown is announced. But the first lockdown, lockdown one, which was about 21 days, I had a gala time. I had no intentions again. I mean, I slept, I watched movies, I did what most of us would have done. And then we ran out of those programs, and obviously you could not binge on too much of food after 21 days. It was all over. So when the second lockdown got announced, I again just had that thought which said that, Vikas, what if there is a third lockdown? What if there is a fourth lockdown? That just kept me, that just set the alarm bells right ringing. And that's when I decided that I should give it a shot. And again, a disclaimer, I till that date, I had never ever written even a blog. I'm being very honest. I had never ever written even a blog of 500 or 600 words. And I still remember when I wrote my first page, which was about 300 odd words. I mean, I would have taken about 2 hours to write my first page. And now, coming from a finance and analytical background, now I just happened to multiply. And I said, if my first page is going to take about 2 hours, if I'm going to write a couple of, let's say 140, 150 pages, I said, no, this is no way this book is going to be completed. And I just wrote 2 pages and I again slept over it for about a week. I don't know. Then again, something happened and I said, no, I really have to prove myself. And that's the time I set a deadline. So this was mid-April, and that's the time I set a deadline of 30th June. I said, come what may, before the end of this quarter, my book will be there in the market. And I didn't have the luxury of choosing any publisher or approaching a publisher at that point in time. And thanks to Amazon and thanks to Kindle, I mean, self-publishing was the route to go. So that was how the deadline was fixed. And then again, with each chapter. So, Amit, I mean, would you want me to tell something about a particular chapter?
I'm going to come to two very specific things because I have gone through the book. Sure. And I told you that actually the foreword is a story in itself.
Yeah.
And it was engaging that you had to go and reading, but I got stuck at IAF and KAF. If you can just talk about that for a bit.
Okay. So IAF is the industrial age framework, and this is what many of our parents have gone through. Again, not my parents, because they were not in a job, but I'm sure many of people in this audience, their parents would have lived that paycheck to paycheck and a regular job. So this is like that 40, 40, 40, wherein you work 40 weeks a year, you have those annual leaves. My Chachaji lived through this framework, right? He was in the Air Force, I told you, Amit. So I'm sure in your defense, you definitely have about 2.5 months of paid leave every year. So you kind of work about 40 weeks a year. And then you typically, I'm not saying that you don't work, but typically, so let's say if you're in a office kind of a job, if you're not posted, so if you're in an office or a commandant kind of a job, you work about 8-9 hours a week, 5 days a week. So about 40 hours a week. So 40 hours a week, then you work for about 40 weeks in a year. Then you work for literally about 40 years of your life. So you join at about 21 or 22, and you retire about 54 or 58. So let's say roughly about 40 years of your life. So this is the framework that many people in our previous generation have lived through. But what I realized, Amit, see, Now I have a son who's 14, I have a daughter who's 12. I realize many parents today, when they so-called coach their kids, they're still behaving as if that 40-40 framework is applicable in today's context. I am not against jobs per se. I am really thankful to all the organizations who employed me for 20 years. I learned a lot from them. So I'm not saying that one should not be looking forward to being in a job. One should definitely be. But you can't be expecting an organization to employ you for 40 years today. I mean, I just spoke to my IIM Indore alumni about 10, 15 days back. I said, you would be lucky if you stay for about 5, 6 years in an organization today. Very lucky if you stay for 10 years, which was kind of the norm when we started our jobs, or when our parents, if some of our parents were in jobs, they expected to possibly spend their entire life in that particular organization. Times have changed, but not many parents are willing to accept that change, or at least that message is not being passed on to the kids. So when I started off with the first chapter, I actually wanted to send the message across very clear in the first chapter that please be conversant to today's times. And that's how I came across this KAF. So this is something which I coined myself. Uh, I don't know if there's a mention in any other book, but this is my own thinking. And again, why I came across this thinking. So Amit, I have a lot of colleagues who are in the software industry today. And though they happen to take their annual vacations and go on some exotic holidays. So this is a conversation which I had with one of my friends about 2 years back. He was vacationing in somewhere in Europe, and he was also on a cruise. But so as per me, I mean, if somebody's on a cruise, that's like a perfect vacation. You cut off from the rest of the world. He said, no, Vikas, I am connected to my office. I mean, I have subscribed to a data pack. I didn't know you could get a data pack on a cruise. Believe me, I'm being naive or I'm being stupid, but till about 2 years back, I didn't know you could subscribe to a data pack while on a cruise. So he says, because I'm sailing on a cruise for about 7 days, but I am on a data pack and I reply to my office mails in the morning and in the evening. I said, what kind of a life is this? You're supposed to be on a vacation. So that's when I had this concept. I mean, this is what I call the knowledge age framework. Though you might be drawing handsome salaries, you might be taking those vacations, but you still connected to your office 12 months, every single day. So this is what I call a 12 by 12 framework, wherein you work 12 hours a day. And 12 hours, the reason, because many of my friends in the software industry work across geographies. So somebody is handling Australia, then somebody is handling UK. So my friend, most of my typical friends start their day at about 8 in the morning and end the day at about 8 or 9 at night, because they start with Australia and end with UK. So this is, and this is going to be a reality, I mean. This is not just going to be limited to software engineers, but I believe increasingly this is going to be the reality. Wherein the organizations, now in the name of COVID or whatever, in the name of working from home, organizations are expecting you to be on the phone or on the mails for about 12 hours a day. I mean, am I right? I speak to a lot of people who are still employees, and they seem to be kind of on their mails for about 12 hours a day. So I believe it's not just limited to software people anymore. This is what my feeling is. In 2020, this 12 by 12 framework is applicable to anybody who's in a corporate job. So you're working 12 hours a day for 12 months of the year, and that's what the current economy says. That's what the current framework is.
So that was IAF and KF, and I Googled them just to confirm that IAF had nothing to do with the Air Force or Rafales from Ambala. And the KF was absolutely a genuine one coming out from Vikas. The point here is that the challenges which are coming in are real. Somebody who went through the dot-com boom, somebody who's seen the 2008 bust, and somebody who's now seeing COVID. I have been along the journey with Vikas for the most of them, except that for 2 of them, I was in the army. So I didn't really feel the impact that way. Now that I am transitioning, the first thing which strikes me is the mindset which Vikas is telling people to follow here. The mindset if it is of a person across genders, across geographies. Seek out opportunities. You can't wait for the opportunities to come for you. And here we have a question which has come in from Atul Jyoti. Vikas is mentioning that giving the CAT exam 3 times is not an easy task for the mental health in today's age when you have extreme competition over seats. And taking the exam again, that is leaving a confirmed seat or an offer, becomes a life-changing decision, like something that you did with MDI Gurgaon. If you could say some inspirational words to keep us motivated towards a goal and not give up, I would be really thankful. Ananta. So, request you
So,
to, how do
yeah,
you keep focus through 3 attempts?
so Amit, again, I have mentioned something about this in my book. Every one of us goes through something called a dream zone. And now again, this is something which I coined myself. We call that a dream zone. When you pass through that zone, everything seems possible in your life. And this doesn't happen every other day. This happens, what? I don't know. I'm not, this possibly happens once, twice, thrice in your life. But once you're in that zone, everything is possible. So that's the reason I told you, I was being very honest. If that decision, I were to take that decision today, I would not have the guts to leave the NDI offer. But, I always have a sentence, as with all matters of the heart, you would know when the time is right for you. So you would know when you're in that dream zone. So it's for somebody to take that decision for himself. Do you really feel for that? I could have done anything for that IIM tag. I mean, to me, an MBA was IIM, nothing else. MBA was not an MBA for me. So it was not just a question of earning money after an MBA. It was more of an emotional response, the reason I could leave my MBA seat. So are you really emotionally connected to your goal, or is it only a financial goal? So once you have those 2 or 3 answers about that dream zone, about that emotional attachment to your goal, you will make it. It's like getting married to the person you wanted to, right? So if you really wanted to, then you would possibly be married. So something like that. And sorry, Amit, I couldn't get the next question.
Preeti, you had something to say?
Yeah, no, I was, as you were talking, a sort of a question came into my mind. So here it is, you've been on both sides of the coin. So you've been in the corporate world for like 15, 16 years, and then you've been an entrepreneur now and that too in your own sort of public speaking, coaching, and author practice, and so on and so forth. Multifaceted entrepreneur, let's put it that way. So, from my perspective, from somebody that sees people go through this cycle, what is it that strikes out to you in terms of what is better? Being somebody else's boss and answering to your own boss there, or being your own boss, but you could be restrained sometime in the sense of, you have to constantly keep thinking of generating those revenues for yourself. What is that struggle? What is that journey? Because I'm sure in today's day and age and in these challenging times, jobs are being rescinded, internships are being rescinded, and it's all down economic doldrums. I think personally, if you say it's the best time, I would say to start, so from that perspective, as a corporateur and as an entrepreneur, what works best for you? What do you think is better than the other? All yours.
Okay. So just one small disclaimer. I'm not a coach. I am a keynote speaker and a corporate trainer. With all due respect to all the
I
coaches.
stand corrected. A
I'm not
keynote speaker and a public speaker and an author now, who
Yeah.
was in sales, who was in finance, and who was in so many other things. Back
Yeah.
to you.
So definitely. So I have learned a lot from job. I believe a job gives you that discipline. And I sincerely believe anybody who starts off, it's always good to spend a couple of years in job, be that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It gives you that routine. It gives you a discipline. And see, and Preeti, you rightly pointed out. Believe me, with so many layoffs and with so much of uncertainty today in the economy and in the companies, this is the best time to be in business. You hardly have anything to lose. You just might be kicked out of your organization tomorrow. And it's good to be leaving the job and trying out something new, right? And if I were to sum it up, the entire thing with one sentence, and this is not my sentence, I heard it from somebody else. Sentence बहुत simple है. किराए का घर बहुत अच्छा है, बट किराए का घर तभी तक अच्छा है जब तक अपना घर ना हो. So that really sums it up. So job is very good, right? I mean, I was able to enjoy so many holidays. I was able to, let's say, enjoy so many luxuries of life and lead a decent life only because of a job. I could save some amount before I could venture into entrepreneurship. That all happened because of a job. but you're not expecting to live the, nobody amongst us, I mean, believe me, you, Amit, or even the audiences, does anybody think of being in a rented accommodation the entire life? Think about it. We do not. At some point of time, we want to be in our own house. So being your boss is about being in your own house one day. It just might happen in the first 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but everybody harbors that ambition, Preeti, of being his or her own boss at some point of time in their lives. And this is the best time. 2020 is the best time. If you fail, 99 other people are failing today. If you succeed, you will be amongst the top 1%. That's the best time. That's the best situation. It's a win-win situation.
I think
Thank you very much for that, Vikas. Yes, Colonel Manish Anand saying extremely motivational. So, Manish, thank you for that comment. With that, it is back to Amit now for the next set. Amit.
Yeah, Vikas, the part you said about 2020 being good is because anybody who's up for a challenge, I think this year could not have got more bag full of challenges. You have the pandemic, you have the economy, you have the sheer range of opportunities. Because as a person who shares your warrior spirit, it doesn't have to come from being in the uniform. I think salespeople are even more. Target oriented that way. If you were sent out for operations, I think sales guys will get Pakistanis on the run or the Chinese on the run that way. That said, I would want you to throw a bit of light on where you see the current opportunities heading. Because when you talked about the IM tag, now with the number of IMs which have opened up, with the number of MBAs which are opening up, and also the opportunity of going abroad and doing MBAs, would MBA have the same charm that it had, say, 20 years back? Or would the graduates or even the kids in school today be better off doing something different? Your views on that?
So, Amit, when I talk about education, see, when I decided to get into engineering, I told you very honestly, I never want to be an engineer, right? But because having studied in the second best engineering college in North India, I had an access to some of the best brains. So today when people talk about online education, I'm not a great believer in online education per se. Education is not about learning a concept. Education is all about assimilating the experiences, learning from each other's experiences. And having stayed at Kurukshetra, I obviously had an access to 300 of the best brains in the country. And similarly, if I look back on my IM education, Amit, so whatever a lesser known MD institute, so they teach the same subjects as what an IM does, right? There would hardly any difference. So now what is it that differentiates these students from the others is, again, the kind of students that you have in that campus. That's about having a great company. So I am still a firm believer that, so we only have 20 IMs. That's not a very big number. Let's say if you are having about 10,000 MBA graduates, 10,000 IM graduates a year, that's still not a very big number. It would be less than 10,000. But because of those associations of those 2 years, the kind of networks you develop, the kind of brainstorming sessions that you're able to do between your peer groups, that is what education is. And that will always have a weightage. So I am not talking about the management or the engineering education per se. I'm always talking about that collective group. So if you happen to be in an IIT Delhi, incidentally, I met somebody today, and he's started off something, and again, he's an IIT Delhi alumnus. So now whenever you think of IIT Delhi, you're thinking about those entrepreneurs, right? So IIT Delhi possibly gives you that environment. That is what people go to IIT Delhi for, not for an engineering education.
And you got that there. It's all about building the relationships and getting to the right place. The hard work pays off in creating those opportunities, because you're able to talk and interact with that many more minds. As you said, it's all about meeting of the mind, and that is something that I personally subscribe to also. Otherwise, I would not have met you and we would not be interacting here today. Manish has a question for you. In a job, you're always on your toes since someone is pushing you. How do you keep yourself motivated in entrepreneurship, as there is no one to watch you work in a disciplined manner? Over to you, Vikas.
So this is what definitely comes to you. So see, in a job, obviously, you also have a troop. So if you're the CEO of the organization, you're managing 200 people, and you are being accountable for the performance of those 200 people. So believe me, you are equally responsible in a job today as you would be in a business. So your boss today expects you to answer the calls. Your boss expects you to do something more than what you're currently doing. You are expected to reply to your emails. You're expected to coordinate with the team members. That's all accountability and responsibility. And the only difference being that yes, you're still kind of assured for your monthly paycheck, but not for a long term. Because even in a job now, people are not really sure about their next year's paycheck. But for an entrepreneur, you need to keep that financial cycle also running. I believe that's just the small minor difference between the two roles today. Otherwise, in terms of responsibility and accountability, I believe both roles are at par. Everything is at par. As an entrepreneur, I still have the luxury of switching off my phone for about 6 to 8 hours on a day. I want to. That luxury is not there with an employee.
Vikas, this has been a great interaction, and thank you to the audience. We have had good engagement. We have had questions coming in from Manish. We had a question from Atul Jyoti. Please get in touch with Vikas. Send him a DM. Connect with him on LinkedIn. He is very active on LinkedIn, and that's where you will find many more of his interactive videos in which his message is there for everyone to listen to. We thank you for your participation in the poll. And Preeti, I think we should close the interaction when we are still on a high. And we will definitely be coming back with Vikas when his second book comes in, and the third and the fourth one. So looking forward to more interactions with entrepreneurs and going ahead with the series. So this is Colonel Amit for you for LinkedIn Local Bharat, saying Jai Hind and a very good evening. And Preeti and Vikas,
so before we go off, a quick reminder once again, people, a couple of people left to give us your extremely valuable feedback. Please do that. Gaurav said there is a question from you here. Unfortunately, there's no time right now, but please do reach out to Vikas over LinkedIn, like Amit said, and he would be more than happy to dive deeper into that particular question for you. Once again, from all of us, it is thank you very much and a very good evening. Take care, Jai Hind, and Shabba Khair. All of us saying bye.
Thanks.
So, dear attendees, we are officially over.